The stars were supposed to end there. At least that's what the Galactic Confederacy believed for the last 10,000 cycles. Every race, every council, every navigational chart stopped at the Veil Line, a deep expanse of space where scanners failed, probes vanished, and ships never returned. They called it the Terminus Expanse, a dead zone, a natural boundary. Some even called it holy. But Ambassador Keir Velen didn't believe in myths. He stood on the bridge of the Teshivar, a diplomatic cruiser of the Alari Empire, staring into that black emptiness that seemed to drink the light from his ship's hull. Behind him, his officers whispered nervously. A few refused to look out the viewport altogether. Superstition ran deep, even among the advanced. "We have no more signal," said Lieutenant Maris. "Probe 9 stopped transmitting 3 minutes ago." "Like the others," Keir murmured. He tapped his fingers against the edge of the console, jaw tight with frustration. "Something's out there, and it's not empty." Maris hesitated. "With respect, sir, this region is forbidden by Confederacy Charter. No ship is allowed to cross the Veil." Keir turned. His pale eyes, sharp and silver, narrowed with subtle contempt. "You know what's worse than breaking rules, Lieutenant? Ignorance. We have sent 12 probes. Not one came back. And yet there's heat, energy spikes, artificial radiation patterns. Nothing natural. The Confederacy is either blind or afraid." A pause. "Afraid of what, sir?" asked Maris. Keir looked back at the darkness. "I intend to find out." The Teshivar moved forward. Slowly at first, then with growing speed, as the automated barriers of the Confederacy's deep space border flickered past. Behind them, alarms had surely triggered. Perhaps a patrol cruiser would follow, but Keir knew they wouldn't dare enter the expanse. No one ever had. No one wanted to, except him. An hour in, the stars began to look different, brighter, sharper. And then the ship's lights dimmed. Unexplained. They were still functioning, but the void beyond the glass, black, endless, seemed to suck the light away from inside. Not like a black hole. This was worse, like something watching. Then the sensor grid snapped to life. Keir stepped forward. "What is that?" "Something's pinging us," said Maris, hands flying over controls. "Not a language, not even code. It's a pulse, rhythmic, it's alive." "Where's it coming from?" A flicker on the screen, a long shape, a massive one. It hovered just beyond normal space. "Sir," Maris whispered. "That's a ship." Keir stared. He'd seen every known design in the Confederacy's records. But this wasn't alien, not like anything in the archives. This was industrial, harsh, brutal lines, dense armor plating, weapons like fangs protruding from its hull, and on its side, illuminated by cold white lights, were 4 words written in a language the galaxy had forgotten. United Earth Military Command. Keir's heart skipped a beat. Humans. They were real. But they weren't lost. They weren't weak. They hadn't gone extinct in some far-off war. They were waiting. And now, they knew someone had crossed the line. The crew of the Teshivar froze. The bridge, once humming with soft sounds of computation and scanning chatter, fell into a silence so heavy it seemed to bend gravity. All eyes were on the massive, brutal object in front of them. A warship, no question. A relic, but not dead, alive. Watching. "Maras." Keir's voice was low, careful. "Are we being scanned?" She nodded stiffly. "In full-spectrum waves. They're seeing everything. Hull integrity, life support, comms activity, our DNA if they want it. And we can't block it?" "No, sir. Whatever they're using, it's penetrating even our military-grade shields. It's like they know every flaw in our tech." Keir leaned in closer to the display, staring at the words on the hull. United Earth Military Command. The name sounded ancient, something pulled out of forgotten archives. Humanity was one of the early primitive species catalogued by the Confederacy 1,000 cycles ago. They'd barely cracked nuclear fission, laughed at for their chaos and self-destruction. Then, they vanished. Now here they were. Or rather, here was one of their ships, sitting at the edge of a place the entire galaxy feared to explore. "Sir," Maras said again, her voice trembling, "we're receiving a transmission." The screen flickered. No image, only static. Then a voice, raw, guttural, unfiltered, cut through the ship's speakers. "You are trespassing in restricted Terran territory. Identify your vessel and intentions immediately. Failure to comply will be interpreted as hostile." The crew flinched. Some gasped. Kyr's heart raced, not with fear, but with awe. "Terran," he whispered. "They call themselves Terrans now?" He gestured quickly to the comms officer. "Open a channel. Full diplomatic protocol." The officer hesitated. "Sir, they might—" "Do it." A soft beep signaled the open channel. "This is Ambassador Kyr Velen of the Aelari Empire, under diplomatic clearance from the Galactic Confederacy. We come in peace. We seek understanding, not conflict." The silence that followed was longer than expected. 10 seconds. 20. Then, "Diplomatic clearance is not recognized. Confederacy presence is not permitted beyond the veil. Return immediately or be neutralized." The last word echoed. Neutralized. Not detained, not arrested. Neutralized. Maras turned pale. "Sir, this is not a negotiation." Kyr knew, and yet he wasn't ready to turn back. "Open our databanks," he ordered. "Send them our mission logs. Let them see we mean no harm." "Sir, if they get access to our full databanks, they already know how to kill us. At least let them know we're not afraid to talk." With a nod, the transfer began. A beam of compressed data shot across the void. 10 seconds later, everything changed. The Terran warship powered up. Lights ignited along its hull, outlining its terrifying bulk. Massive rail cannons turned, missile bays opened like gaping wounds, and worse, something internal flared up. A gravitational signature so dense and unstable, the Teshvar's artificial gravity warped for a split second. "Sir," Maras gasped, "they have singularity weapons." Kyr couldn't believe it. No known civilization in the galaxy had dared deploy those since the Cyclade Wars. Not even the Confederacy. They were outlawed, too dangerous to contain. But the Terrans had them. Ready. Armed. And then, another voice came over the comms. Different this time. Human, yes, but calm. Cold. "Ambassador Kyr Velen, we have reviewed your vessel. You are not a military threat. You may proceed under escort." The crew exchanged confused glances. Kyr didn't speak. He simply stared ahead, into the dark. He knew what that meant. They weren't just being let in, they were being invited. The Terran warship didn't move like any other vessel Kyr had seen. It didn't glide or drift with inertia like Confederacy cruisers. It shifted through space like a predator through water. Smooth, silent, deliberate. The sheer presence of it dwarfed the Teshvar, making Kyr's ship feel more like a diplomatic skiff than a cruiser. Two smaller crafts detached from the warship's underside. Compact, fast, but just as brutally designed. They flanked the Teshvar, their weapons trained on it but not firing. The message was clear. Follow or be erased. Maras was whispering to another officer, but Kyr silenced them with a raised hand. "No fear," he said quietly. "We asked to see what lies beyond the veil. Now we will." The ship's engines engaged, and together the convoy drifted deeper into the darkness. Hours passed. Time lost meaning. Outside, stars faded, replaced by something else. Structures. Massive rings, old and dormant. satellites the size of cities, fields of debris with strange geometric patterns. There were signs of war, but also signs of construction. Humanity hadn't just crossed into the expanse, they'd made it their own. And then, finally, it appeared. A planet. It shimmered with artificial light, covered in orbiting arrays and fortified rings. It didn't look like a colony, it looked like a capital. "This isn't Earth," Keir muttered. "No," Maris confirmed, "but it's definitely human. There's atmosphere, gravity, biosignatures, massive cities, and, sir, I'm detecting a population in the billions." Billions in the expanse. "How did they build all this?" someone whispered. "How did we not know?" Keir didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the spires below, the brilliant lights, the gravity wells that suggested power cores beyond Confederacy understanding. All of it screamed one truth. The humans had evolved. Alone. In secret. And without limits. They had been underestimated. The comms crackled again. This time it wasn't a warning. It was an invitation. "Ambassador Keir Velen, you are requested to disembark. The High Marshal of Terra will receive you personally." Keir nodded. "Prepare my transport shuttle." Maris leaned in. "Sir, you're going down alone?" "I must," Keir said. "If we want answers, if we want to understand what humanity has become, I need to look them in the eye." The shuttle detached from the Teshivar, flanked again by Terran escorts. As it descended through the artificial storm layer cloaking the planet, the true scale of the human presence became visible. Towering cities built into the bones of old megastructures, military academies with craft soaring in formation, orbital elevators pulsing with traffic. Keir saw no signs of civilian weakness, no slums, no idle labor. This was a world where every soul had a purpose. And standing on the landing pad, waiting beneath a banner that bore a symbol long forgotten in galactic history, a fractured Earth cradled in a steel fist, was a woman. She was tall, armored not in ceremonial robes but hardened exoplate. Her eyes burned with something Keir recognized instantly. Discipline. As he stepped out of the shuttle, she didn't offer a hand or bow. She simply spoke. "I am High Marshal Adrian Holt, Supreme Commander of the Terran Core Systems." Keir offered the slightest nod. "Ambassador Keir Velen, I bring greetings from the Galactic Confederacy." Her gaze didn't waver. "We didn't ask for greetings." Keir smiled, thin and tired. "Number, you asked who dared cross your border." A silence passed between them. Holt spoke again, voice like tempered iron. "You wanted to know what lies beyond the veil? Welcome to the answer. But let me be clear, Ambassador. If you've come to control, to catalog, or to exploit, you're already too late." Behind her, massive holograms lit up, showing systems, fleets, planets Keir didn't even know existed. Human systems, human fleets, human colonies, dozens of them, spanning space the Confederacy thought empty. His breath caught in his throat. She leaned forward slightly. "You're not here to study us, Ambassador. You're here to decide whether to fear us." Keir Velen had been in the presence of kings, warlords, even hive queens whose minds controlled entire species. But none of them felt like this. High Marshal Adrian Holt wasn't a monarch, and yet she ruled the space around her. Not with charisma, not with fear, with certainty. A kind of unshakable resolve that made you feel like resistance wasn't just foolish, it was irrelevant. He followed her through a stark corridor of steel and black alloy, deeper into the Terran stronghold. No decorations, no extravagance, just functionality. Cameras tracked his every step. Soldiers in obsidian armor stood like statues. No insignias, no expressions. Pure efficiency. Keir cleared his throat. "Your presence here? This empire you've built, why has no trace of it reached the Confederacy? Not a signal. Not a single defector. Holt didn't look back as she answered. Because we didn't want to be found, and because we understood something the Confederacy never did. Secrecy is survival. They entered a wide chamber, part war room, part museum. Holograms flickered with star charts Keir had never seen. Systems labeled in ancient Terran script. Battles marked with casualty counts that dwarfed even the largest wars Keir had studied. And in the center, a single preserved object, a battered, rusted old satellite. "Do you know what that is?" Holt asked. Keir stepped closer, peering through the containment field. "It's primitive. Early orbital tech?" She nodded. "That was Voyager 1, one of humanity's first attempts to reach beyond its star system. We launched it with greetings, music, mathematics, a message to the stars." Keir blinked. "The Confederacy found Voyager centuries ago. We thought your species had perished." She turned to him now, her face unreadable. "And that assumption suited us. While the galaxy laughed at our early failures, we buried ourselves in the darkness, grew in the cracks of forgotten sectors, and built an empire without your interference." Keir's voice softened. "But why the veil? Why here, at the edge of the map?" Her eyes gleamed. "Because it wasn't the edge. It was the border you were too afraid to cross. The moment we saw how you feared the unknown, we knew we had our weapon." Carr swallowed hard. "You used our fear as a shield." "Exactly." He looked around at the technology humming quietly around them. "And now? You're revealing yourselves. Why?" Her gaze locked onto his. "Because your Confederacy is breaking, corruption, infighting, revolts. You'll fall, and when you do, someone will fill the vacuum. We've watched long enough. We're done hiding." Keir felt the weight of those words settle on his chest. This wasn't a rogue faction. This wasn't a lost colony. This was a rival civilization, fully matured and now stepping out from the shadows. "But surely there's a path for diplomacy," he offered. "Trade, unity, even alliance." "No," Holt interrupted. "There's only one kind of unity that works with the Confederacy. Conquest. You enslave what you can't bribe. You erase what you can't understand." "That's not—" She raised a hand. "We know your history. We infiltrated your networks years ago. We've watched the trials, the puppet councils, the false peace. Don't lie to me, Ambassador. You're not here to make friends. You're here to evaluate the threat." He didn't deny it. Her tone hardened. "So let me save you the time. We are the threat, the one you never planned for, the one you left behind, and now we're coming back." Before Keir could speak again, the room's main display shifted. A Confederacy fleet, his own, had appeared just beyond the veil. A search party. Holt watched it calmly. "Looks like your leash caught up with you," she said. Keir stepped forward. "Please, if they see this world, they'll panic. They'll retaliate." "They'll try," Holt said coldly. Then she pressed a button. The Terran orbital defenses activated. 12 anti-ship platforms, each locking onto a different Confederacy vessel. A warning. Not an attack. Not yet. Keir turned back to her, desperate. "Hi, Marshal, I can stop this. I can go back and speak to the Council. We can negotiate." She stared at him a long moment. Then she said something that froze his blood. "No, Ambassador. You're not going back. You're staying here." The words hit Keir like a blow. He blinked, stunned, trying to decide if he'd misheard her. "I'm sorry," he said slowly. "Did you say I'm not going back?" High Marshal Holt didn't repeat herself. She didn't need to. Guards had already stepped into the room. 4 of them, fully armored, weapons holstered but ready. Not menacing, but final. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement. His fate had already been decided. "You came here for answers," she said, "and you've received them. But you're not returning to deliver your report. Not yet." Kyr's heart thudded in his chest. That's kidnapping, an act of war." Holt raised an eyebrow. "War implies two equal sides. You're from a crumbling confederacy, one that hasn't fought a real war in centuries. We've prepared for this for generations. If we wanted war, your ship would already be scrap." Kyr tried to compose himself, lifting his chin. "Then what do you want?" Holt walked slowly to the viewport at the far end of the chamber, where the Confederacy fleet shimmered faintly in the distance. "We want you to watch," she said. "We want you to see the truth for yourself, not from a filtered council brief. From inside. You'll see our colonies, our soldiers, our children. You'll see what humanity became when no one was there to hold us back." "And then?" Kyr asked, voice low. "Then you'll understand what's coming. And when you do return, if we allow it, you won't speak as a diplomat. You'll speak as a witness." Kyr's lips parted, but no words came. This wasn't a political move. This was psychological, strategic. Keep him. Let him see. Let him believe. Holt turned from the window. "There's a room prepared for you. No cell. You're not a prisoner, not officially. But you will be monitored. You will not access your ship. And you will not communicate with the Confederacy." "Then what am I?" She smiled faintly, but it was not kind. "You're the first outsider to stand on a Terran world in over 1,000 years. That makes you important and dangerous. But most of all, that makes you ours now." The guards moved without a word. One stepped to Kyr's side, gesturing politely but firmly. He knew resistance would be meaningless. This wasn't a negotiation. This was a message. As they walked through the corridor, Kyr couldn't help but glance at the Terran officers he passed. None looked at him with hatred. There was no arrogance, no mockery, only focus, quiet purpose. And that frightened him more than any threat ever could. They believed in what they were doing. The room they brought him to was high above the surface, with a panoramic view of the city below. Glowing arteries of transport systems, defense towers rising like spines, children walking in groups under the gaze of armored sentries. It wasn't tyranny, it wasn't chaos, it was something else. Order, controlled, absolute order. He sat near the window, watching for hours. And in that time, something inside him began to shift. The Confederacy had labeled humans as chaotic, primitive, unstable, but that was the humans of the past. These Terrans? They were the children of war, bred in silence, evolved in the dark, not savage, strategic, and they were moving. He saw it now. The way the fleet near the Veil moved, not retreating, just observing, testing response, assessing weaknesses. A plan was already in motion, and Kyr, he was just the first domino. Kyr didn't sleep. The bed they gave him was soft enough. The room, though Spartan, was more comfortable than most diplomatic quarters he'd stayed in across the stars. But none of that mattered. His mind was too full, spiraling around everything he'd seen since crossing the Veil. He had come seeking truth. Instead, he found a civilization with sharper edges and darker intentions than any report could have prepared him for. The Terrans weren't just survivors. They were predators who had learned to wait, to adapt, to grow powerful in isolation. He stood by the glass wall, staring down at the city. Everything he saw screamed discipline and precision. Even the children walked in neat lines, flanked by instructors who wore body armor like it was everyday clothing. Patrol drones hummed overhead in rigid formations, scanning every face. There was no chaos here. No room for it. A soft chime broke his thoughts. The The door opened without a knock. High Marshal Holt stepped inside, alone. Keir turned but didn't speak. She crossed the room slowly, arms behind her back, gaze level and unreadable. "You haven't touched the food," she said, nodding toward the untouched tray on the table. "I'm not hungry." "Suit yourself." She moved to the glass, her reflection overlapping his in the pane. "I know what you're thinking," she said. "You're wondering whether we're monsters." Keir remained silent for a moment, then answered. "Number, I'm wondering how the Confederacy let you grow into this without noticing." She smiled faintly. "Because they were too busy congratulating themselves, maintaining order, polishing their robes while their systems rotted underneath them." Keir gave a bitter laugh. "You sound like the rebels on LSR Prime." "They were amateurs," she said flatly. "We're patient." There was something final in her tone. She wasn't posturing. She was stating fact. Keir turned to her. "So what happens now? You keep me here indefinitely while you push past the veil and seize more space? Expand your empire planet by planet?" Holt didn't blink. "That's the Confederacy model, not ours. We're not interested in seizing. We're interested in reclaiming." "Reclaiming?" Her eyes hardened. "You really think we stayed behind the veil all this time? That we never left?" Keir narrowed his eyes. "What are you saying?" She gestured, and the wall in front of them shimmered, transforming into a holographic display. Star charts lit up. Dozens of systems beyond the veil glowed red, familiar names, Confederacy colonies. Then, slowly, the red systems blinked out, one by one. "Wait, what is this?" Keir asked, his voice dry. "Confederacy outposts," she said, "gone silent over the last 15 cycles." He stepped forward, brows furrowing. "You're responsible?" "Number. But we're aware. The galaxy's breaking down, Ambassador. Pirates, uprisings, border wars. You've stretched your empire too thin, left planets to rot. Now those systems are either lost or ripe." Keir turned to her, suddenly tense. "And you're going to take them?" Holt didn't deny it. "We're going to protect them. If that means occupying them, rebuilding them, defending them, then yes, we will. You're just replacing one empire with another." She looked him dead in the eye. "Number. We're replacing decay with order. We tried chaos once. It nearly destroyed us. We won't make that mistake again." Keir stared at her for a long time. Then he asked the question that had burned inside him since his first glimpse of this place. "Why now?" She didn't hesitate. "Because you came looking. Because your maps reached too far. And because we're ready." He clenched his fists, voice low. "This will be war." "No," she replied. "This will be inevitable." They stood there in silence, the city below pulsing with quiet energy. In the distance, a launch flare streaked into the sky, another Terran ship leaving orbit. "Where is that going?" Keir asked, barely a whisper. Holt didn't look at him. "Home," she said. "To Earth." Keir froze. "But Earth was destroyed centuries ago. We have no record of—" Her voice cut like steel. "Your records were wrong." She turned, walking back toward the door. "Earth never fell. It evolved. And soon, Ambassador, you'll see it for yourself." The door shut behind her. Keir stood alone, heart pounding. Terrans weren't just back. They had never left. The trip to Earth was not optional. 2 days after the conversation with High Marshal Holt, Keir was quietly escorted aboard a Terran transport vessel, sleek, armored, and deadly in a way that didn't even try to hide its purpose. No one told him where exactly Earth was located, not in terms of coordinates. He was simply told to prepare for the return. The journey took less time than he expected. Either they used jump technology beyond anything the Confederacy had encountered, or Earth was far closer than he'd ever believed. That possibility chilled him more than the ship's sterile silence. When the shuttle emerged from its jump, the sight outside the viewport made him forget to breathe. There it was, blue and white, cloud-wrapped, green lands shining like polished gems under golden sunlight. Earth, alive, not ruined, not radioactive, not abandoned. It was thriving. A vast orbital ring encircled the planet like a steel crown, connected to it by dozens of space elevators. It was a masterpiece of engineering and war. Hundreds of ships patrolled its circumference. Defense platforms bristled with weapons. This was not a peaceful homeworld. This was a fortress. Keir leaned closer, eyes wide. His people had written Earth off centuries ago, labeled it a dead world, a failed experiment of an unstable species. But here it stood, laughing at every lie the Confederacy told itself. The ship began its descent. Unlike most Confederacy capitals, where dignitaries were greeted with pomp and performance, Keir was met by silence. No parades, no flowers, just rows of soldiers, unmoving, their armor marked with a deep red emblem. A broken chain. Holt awaited him again, this time clad in a uniform that bore battle scars. Behind her, a mountain of steel and concrete reached skyward. The Citadel, as she called it, the heart of Terran command. Keir stepped onto the landing platform, breathing in the air. It was cleaner than expected. Crisp. Controlled. "You brought me here to intimidate me," he said. "No," Holt replied. "I brought you here to educate you." They entered the Citadel, halls of metal and glass filled with activity. Scientists, officers, children in training uniforms reciting tactical formulas. Keir caught a glimpse of something deeper as they passed a large observation window. A school. But unlike any school he'd seen before, this one included simulations of alien contact, war games involving species from the Confederacy. Children, some no older than 10, discussed strategies that most military academies would hesitate to teach cadets. "What is this place?" Keir asked, voice dry. Holt answered without breaking stride. "Preparation. This world has known the truth for generations. That contact with the galaxy would come again. We didn't sit idle. We didn't pray for peace. We trained for survival." Keir followed her into a chamber unlike the rest, quieter, older. Dark stone walls, a giant black table surrounded by high-backed chairs. In the center, a hologram of Earth spun slowly, encased in an orbital defense net. "This is the War Council," Holt said. "You're standing in the same room where we launched the retaking of Vega 9, where we recovered the lost colonies of Sigma Draconis, where we prepared for the day a Confederacy ship would breach the veil." Keir looked around, trying to steady his breathing. "You've been planning this for how long?" "Since the Confederacy cataloged humanity as a Class 3 unstable species. Since you left us to die." Keir turned to her. "We didn't know." "You didn't care," Holt snapped, eyes flaring with cold fire. "You saw primitives, savages. You let the wars ravage our world, then decided we weren't worth the effort. That's fine. We adapted. But don't pretend this was an accident." Her anger didn't come in waves. It was precise, aimed like a knife. She stepped closer to him. "Now we stand at the edge of your empire. And I promise you this, Ambassador. We won't be the ones asking for permission. We've waited too long. Watched too long." Keir lowered his gaze. "You're going to invade." "No," she said. "We're going to replace. You built a decaying empire. We will build something better on the bones you left behind." And just as she turned away, a new alert echoed through the chamber. "Unidentified fleet entering the Veil Zone. Multiple Confederacy warships, weapons armed." Holt didn't flinch. "Looks like the old world just made its move." Keir stared at the hologram, The galaxy was on fire, and he was standing at the heart of the spark. The War Council chamber erupted into quiet motion. Not panic. Readiness. Officers moved to their stations, holograms flickering to life, orbital defense lines recalibrating. Outside, Earth's sky darkened as high-atmosphere shields activated, turning the atmosphere a faint shade of crimson. High Marshal Holt stood calmly in the center of it all, her presence the anchor in the rising storm. Keir stepped back from the main display, heart pounding. The Confederacy fleet had arrived in force, over 100 ships, battle-ready, cutting across the veil as if to prove a point. Their transponders blared a clear message. Stand down and surrender. This territory is under Confederacy protection. He knew the voice behind that message. High Counselor Theron, a bureaucrat who'd never seen real battle in his life, now commanding ships as if titles made him powerful. They've come to flex, Keir muttered. They think a show of numbers will scare you. Holt didn't even glance at him. They came to reclaim control, she said, but they forgot one thing. Keir looked at her. What? She nodded to the Earth hologram. They're not the apex species anymore. The Terran fleet launched. Dozens of vessels, sleek, angular, weaponized with dark matter cannons and gravitic disruptors, poured from the orbital ring. Unlike Confederacy ships, which broadcast their presence like peacocks, the Terran ships were silent predators. No chatter, no dramatic formations, just swift, cold movement. In less than 3 minutes, they were on the Confederacy fleet. Keir watched, stunned. The Confederacy opened fire first. Standard pulse arrays, ion scatterfields, torpedoes. Predictable. Measured. But the Terrans didn't flinch. They adapted. One by one, Confederacy missiles were intercepted mid-air, their guidance scrambled by Terran counter-AI. Pulse arrays were absorbed by polarized armor that changed frequencies faster than the attacking weapons could adjust. Then the Terrans returned fire, and the sky split. Mass drivers launched solid slugs at relativistic speed, punching through ship hulls like paper. Graviton weapons twisted space around entire cruisers, crushing them without ever touching their hulls. EMP bursts shorted out Confederacy command vessels in seconds. Within 5 minutes, the fleet was in disarray. Within 10, it was in retreat. Keir stumbled back, gripping the edge of the display table for support. His voice shook. They didn't stand a chance. No, Holt said quietly. They never did. The chamber dimmed again, as victory protocols replaced the combat feed. The Earth Defense Net reported minimal damage. No Terran ships lost. The Confederacy fleet, what remained of it, had scattered back toward the Veil, their arrogance broken. Keir turned to Holt, words caught in his throat. She finally faced him fully, her armor still smudged with the dust of command. This is the beginning, she said. You've seen what we've built. You've seen what we're willing to do. Now you understand. He shook his head. But they'll send more. Bigger fleets. Full council authorization. Let them, she cut in. Every time they come, we learn more. Every weapon they fire, we counter. Every system they target, we rebuild stronger. Let them bleed their empire dry. Kor's shoulders sagged. This will plunge the galaxy into war. No, Holt said. This will cleanse it. Silence lingered. Then she walked over to him, lowered her voice. You still have value, Ambassador. You can return. Not as a diplomat, as a witness, as proof of what's coming. He stared at her, dazed. You're letting me go? She nodded. You'll be watched, but yes. Go back. Tell them what you saw. Tell them humanity didn't fade in the dark. We thrived in it. Keir stepped slowly toward the chamber's exit, but paused. One question, he said. Why me? Why not kill me like the others? Holt's expression softened just enough to be human. Because you looked us in the eye and didn't flinch. That matters. You're not like the others. You listened. And because of that, you get to survive." He nodded faintly. As the shuttle carried him back across the veil, Kier watched Earth shrink into the distance. Not a blue dot. A burning torch. A warning. When he arrived at Confederacy Central Command, the High Council was waiting. They expected debriefing, strategy, weakness, but Kier looked them dead in the eye and said only one thing: "We're not alone beyond the map." Then he leaned forward. "And they're coming."